Dear students, good morning. I am Pradeep Bodhakur sir. Today, in our first session of class 10 English, we are doing the lesson titled Madam Rides the Bus by Vallikannan. This story is about Valli Ammai, an 8-year-old girl whose favorite pastime was observing the world as much as could be seen of it by her standing in the front doorway of her house. Out of curiosity concerning journeying in a bus, she, on her own, traveled in a bus from her village to the nearest town and back again. Her journey by bus gave her new insights into life. Insight means capacity of understanding hidden truths. A child has curiosity or a strong desire to know or learn something unknown. A child wants to explore the world and learn things. Now, let us read the text. The first paragraph. There was a girl named Valli Ammai who was called Valli for short. She was 8 years old and very curious about things. Her favorite pastime was standing in the front doorway of her house, watching what was happening in the street outside. There were no playmates of her own age on her street, and this was about all she had to do. But for Valli, standing at the front door was every bit as enjoyable as any of the elaborate games other children played. Watching the street gave her many new, unusual experiences. Valli Amma, also called Valli, who is the main character of our story, is also a curious child of 8 years. It is human nature to explore the unknown. As a child, her favorite pastime, meaning a work done regularly for enjoyment, was standing in the front doorway of her house and watching what was happening in the street outside. Any child of her age would like to play with its friends and enjoy its time. But Valli had no playmates of her own age on her street. So, all she could do was observe the world outside her house. The human mind wants to be engaged in some positive activity or the other at all times, either alone or with friends. It cannot remain idle. Perhaps Valli too, like any other child, would have liked to spend her time with playmates. But for Valli, standing at the front door of her house and observing the world outside was as enjoyable as any of the elaborate or complex games played by other children. For Valli, her pastime was a mental game that she played with the world outside. Watching the activities in the street in front of her house gave Valli many unusual or uncommon experiences. Being a small child who hadn't seen much of the world, most of the activities must have been new for her. And every new situation is pegged in wonder. Now let us read the third paragraph. I hope you have your books in front of you. The most fascinating thing of all was the bus that traveled between her village and the nearest town. It passed through her street each hour, once going to the town and once coming back. The sight of the passengers, the sight of the bus, filled each time with a new set of passengers, was a source of unending joy for Valli. Of all the things that Valli observed in the street in front of her house, the most fascinating or extremely interesting thing for her was the bus which traveled between her village and the nearest town. The bus passed through her street each hour. Once it went to the town, then it again came back along the street, passing through her village. Each time Valli saw the bus on her street, filled with a new set of passengers, she was filled with unending joy. Thus, the newness of the passengers in each trip did not allow the situation to become monotonous or boring. Though the bus was the same, variety, they say, is the spice of life. Without variety, observing the same set of things tends to make the human mind feel bored. And the mind thinks of exploring new situations. But Valli had no such option. The newness of the passengers kept her mind fascinated. Now, let us go to the next paragraph. Day after day, she watched the bus, and gradually a tiny wish crept into her head and grew there. She wanted to ride on that bus, even if just once. This wish became stronger and stronger until it was an overwhelming desire. Valli would stare wistfully at the people who got on or off the bus when it stopped at the street corner. Their faces would kindle in her longings, dreams, and hopes. If one of her friends happened to ride the bus and tried to describe the sights of the town to her, Valli would be too jealous to listen and would shout in English, "Proud, proud." Neither she nor her friends really understood the meaning of the word, but they used it often as a slang expression of disapproval. When someone associates oneself with something or observes something with fascination or deep interest for a considerable period of time, one develops a strong attraction for that thing. The same thing happened to Valli too. As she kept on watching the bus day after day, a tiny or very small wish crept or entered unnoticed, even by Valli, into her head. The wish that was tiny in the beginning grew inside her head with time, as she kept on observing the bus. She perhaps thought that if all those passengers, new ones every time, could travel in the bus, she could also do the same, if only once. She developed a strong fascination for journeying in the bus. Had she been observing something else, or had she been playing games with children of her age, she might have developed a fascination for something else, or a fascination for excelling in the games with her playmates. That wish became stronger and stronger with time until it became an overwhelming desire, or a very strong desire. It was like a tiny seed growing into a fully grown plant. Valli would stare or look long fixedly, wistfully, or longingly at the passengers who got on or off the bus. Valli's stare was wistful because she desperately wanted to fulfill something that was lacking in her life. And that something was a ride in the bus like those grown-up persons. The faces of those passengers would kindle or arouse emotions in her. These emotions were longings or strong desires of a ride in the bus, dreams of actually traveling, and hopes of someday fulfilling her desire. Valli had become deeply preoccupied or involved in her own desire. She could not even accept the fact that some friend of hers could travel to town in that bus. If that friend tried to describe the sights of the town to Valli, she would be too jealous to listen to her and would express her displeasure or disapproval by shouting the words, "Proud, proud," at her face. Valli couldn't admire her friend's description of the town. Now let us go to the next paragraphs. Over many days and months, Valli listened carefully to conversations between her neighbors and people who regularly used the bus, and she also asked a few discreet questions here and there. This way, she picked up various small details about the bus journey. The town was 6 miles from her village. The fare was 30 paise one way, which is almost nothing at all, she heard one well-dressed man say. But to Valli, who scarcely saw that much money from one month to the next, it seemed a fortune. The trip to the town took 45 minutes. On reaching town, if she stayed in her seat and paid another 30 paise, she could return home on the same bus. This meant that she could take the 1 o'clock afternoon bus, reach the town at 1:45, and be back home by about 2:45. On and on went her thoughts as she calculated and recalculated, planned and replanned. Valli started planning for her bus ride. As a mature planner, she started gathering information about the bus journey. She didn't want to do anything hurriedly. She took her own time to make a foolproof plan. Over many days and months, she listened carefully to conversations between her neighbors and people who regularly used the bus. She also asked a few discreet or careful questions here and there. Her questions were discreet because she did not want anyone to know what she was planning. If, because of her carelessness, somebody got to know about her plan, her family might be informed. And the little girl that she was, she knew that her family would do everything to see to it that her plan did not succeed. So, by asking questions, Valli picked up various small details about the bus journey. Now she had information that the town was 6 miles from her village and the fare was 30 paise one way. Though the fare wasn't much, but to Valli it seemed a fortune, or in other words, a large amount of money, because she didn't see that much of money during an entire month. Valli had also gathered information that it took 45 minutes for the bus to reach town from her village, and also that she could return home on the same bus if, on reaching town, she stayed in her seat and paid another 30 paise. She even planned to take the 1 o'clock afternoon bus, reach the town at 1:45 and be back home by about 2:45. Her planning of the time was because, as later on in the story we will see, that every day after lunch her mother slept from about 1 o'clock to 4 o'clock. So, being just an 8-year-old girl, this was quite some planning. You would all agree, won't you, students? So, to make her plan foolproof, she calculated and recalculated and planned and replanned. She did not want to miss out on anything. She was a meticulous or careful and precise planner. This much for today, students. We will continue in the next session. Have a good day. Thank you.